The first sign of the impending catastrophe came when the outer colonies of the Moravian Empire went silent. Not just communication blackouts. Every signal, from basic telemetry to quantum entanglement beacons, simply ceased to exist. The Moravians, pride of the Galactic Council and masters of 13 star systems, sent their mighty Third Fleet to investigate. They never returned. The long-range sensors of nearby systems captured only fragments of what happened. Crystal ships, their hulls glowing with internal light, like frozen lightning, emerged from the depths of dark space. They moved with impossible grace for their size, each vessel larger than a small moon. The Moravian fleet's energy weapons, powerful enough to crack planets, splashed harmlessly against the crystalline surfaces. Where damage did occur, the alien hulls simply regrew, faceted patterns spreading like ice across water. The battle lasted 6 minutes. The pride of the Moravian Empire became nothing more than glittering debris among the stars. Within days, the Galactic Council received similar reports from 6 other member species. The crystal ships, now identified as the Vextar by the few survivors who witnessed their communications, were systematically moving through the galaxy's outer rim. They left nothing behind but shattered worlds and broken fleets. High Admiral Zenith of the Crimson Dynasties organized the first major counteroffensive. She gathered the combined might of 7 species space forces, planet crackers from the Silicon Collective, phase shift bombers from the Thought Swarm, even the legendary ghost ships of the Quantum Tribes. 2,000 of the most advanced warships ever built formed a defensive line around the Hermes cluster. The Vextar fleet emerged from hyperspace like a crystal storm. Their ships moved in patterns that defied standard combat logic, breaking apart and reforming mid-battle. Traditional formation tactics proved useless against an enemy that could split their capital ships into smaller attack craft at will, each fragment as deadly as the whole. The phase shift bombers struck first, their weapons designed to disrupt the very fabric of spacetime. The Vextar vessels simply absorbed the reality warping energies, their crystalline structures refracting the attacks back at the Allied fleet. 300 ships vanished in the first exchange, their crews trapped in pocket dimensions of fractured spacetime. The Silicon Collective deployed their planet crackers next, unleashing beams of pure antimatter. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Vextar ships showed signs of damage, their crystal surfaces cracking under the onslaught. But then something impossible happened. The cracks began to glow with blinding light, and the ships grew stronger, converting the energy of their own destruction into new growth. The ghost ships of the Quantum Tribes made their final stand, using their advanced technology to phase between dimensions and strike at the Vextar from angles that shouldn't exist. But the crystal ships adapted, their surfaces beginning to vibrate at frequencies that shattered the quantum state of anything that came too close. The pride of the Quantum Tribes dissolved into elementary particles, their crews not even leaving bodies behind. High Admiral Zenith watched her command center's holographic display with growing horror as 2,000 ships became 1,000, then 500, then less than 100 in under an hour. The Vextar moved through the defensive line like a scythe through wheat, each pass leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Her final transmission to the Galactic Council was brief. They cannot be stopped by any weapons we possess. They are not simply destroying us. They are learning from every attack, growing stronger with each engagement. The galaxy as we know it has hours, perhaps days at most. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. The transmission ended with the destruction of her flagship, the crystal ships moving on to their next target with mechanical precision. In the council chambers on Centauri Prime, 17 species watched in silence as their greatest military force was reduced to nothing. The most advanced civilizations in known space had just been handed their first absolute defeat. And the Vextar were only getting started. In the deepest level of the galactic archives, Junior researcher Kixtall moved through stacks of holographic data like a ghost. The young Moravian's translucent scales reflected the soft blue light of ancient records as she searched for anything that might help against the Vextar. After 3 straight days without rest, her superior had ordered her to stop. But with her homeworld now nothing more than crystalline debris, sleep seemed like a distant luxury. She almost missed it. A corrupted file, tucked away in the First Contact archives from over 50 years ago. The footage was grainy, captured by an automated probe that had malfunctioned shortly after transmission. But what it showed made her heart skip a beat. A small ship, primitive by Council standards, faced off against a crystal vessel that could only be Vextar. The unknown ship's design was brutal and functional, nothing like the elegant vessels of advanced species. Its weapons were crude, chemical propellants, and solid projectiles instead of energy beams or quantum warheads. Yet somehow, impossibly, the primitive ship won. Kixtall enhanced the footage, running it through every filter available. The unknown vessel had used some kind of thermal weapon, alternating between extreme heat and cold. The Vextar scout ship's crystal structure had failed under the stress, shattering into a million glittering pieces. Her claws trembled as she traced the unknown ship's origin. The coordinates led to a system that made her scales pale. Earth, home of the species known as humans. The Council had quarantined their system 50 years ago, deeming them too volatile and unpredictable for contact. Their technology was centuries behind the Galactic standard, their ships still relying on primitive fusion drives and physical ammunition. But they had done what 17 advanced species could not. They had killed a Vextar ship. The Council chamber erupted in chaos when Kixtall presented her findings. The Silicon Collective's representatives vibrated with indignation at the suggestion of seeking help from primitives. The Quantum Tribe's counselor phased in and out of reality in agitation, their multi-dimensional voice echoing with scorn. "You propose we break our own quarantine laws." High Counselor Ven's voice cut through the din. The ancient Moravian scales had long since faded to white with age, but his eyes still burned with the same fire that had led their people to the stars. "You suggest we turn to a species that still burns hydrocarbons for some of their power." Kixtall stood her ground. "I suggest we turn to the only species that has ever defeated them." She played the footage again, letting the silence grow, as they watched the impossible victory. "Our advanced energy weapons do nothing. Our quantum technology falls short. Perhaps it's time we tried something different. Something primitive." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, the mathematics of extinction made the decision simple. The Vextar had already destroyed a third of Council space. At their current rate of advance, they would reach the core worlds in less than a month. The fastest ship in the Council fleet, the Light of Dawn, was chosen for the mission. As its quantum drives spun up for the journey to Earth, Kixtall found herself added to the diplomatic team. Her discovery had earned her a place in what could be the galaxy's last hope. The ship's captain, a grizzled veteran of the quantum tribes named Zex, pulled her aside before launch. "The humans have no faster-than-light communications, no quantum entanglement channels. By the time we reach them, another dozen systems will have fallen. What makes you think they'll even care about our war?" Kixtall watched the final preparations through the bridge's viewport, her answer coming with quiet certainty, because the footage shows something more important than their victory. It shows the human ship trying to communicate first. They only fought when the Vextar attacked. That says something about them, something the Council missed 50 years ago. The Light of Dawn leaped into quantum space, racing against time itself. Somewhere ahead lay Earth, and with it, either the galaxy's salvation or its final hope dying in crystal fire. Commander Jack Reynolds sat in the darkened combat analysis room of the UES Hyperion, running the alien footage for the 37th time. Coffee cups littered his console, each one marking another hour of obsessive study. The holographic display cast sharp shadows across his weather-worn face as he watched the crystal ships tear through another advanced alien fleet. "Play it again, Titan," he commanded the ship's eye. "Focus on impact points of the energy weapons." The footage zoomed in, showing beams of pure energy splashing harmlessly off the crystalline hulls. But Reynolds wasn't watching the impacts. He was watching what happened moments after, when the energy dissipated. Freeze frame. Enhance Sector 7. There. For a split second, the crystal surface showed microscopic patterns. Most would dismiss them as battle damage, but Reynolds had spent 20 years as a combat engineer before taking command. He knew stress patterns when he saw them. Cross-reference with temperature readings during impact. Titan's response was immediate. Temperature variance of 3,000 degrees Celsius between impact point and surrounding hull area, Commander. Crystal structure shows signs of thermal stress, but regenerates within 0.3 seconds. Reynolds leaned forward, his steel-gray eyes reflecting the dancing lights of the display. "Now that's interesting. Show me the scans from our first contact incident with their scout ship." The display changed to footage from 50 years ago, when the UES Thunderchild had encountered and destroyed a crystal ship near Jupiter. The antiquated weapons had seemed like pockguns compared to the alien vessel's technology, but something had worked. Match temperature readings from both encounters. The numbers flowed across the screen, and Reynolds felt a smile tugging at his lips. The Thunderchild's primitive weapons had created something the advanced aliens hadn't: rapid temperature shifts. Their plasma cannons maintained constant heat, but the old ship's combination of nuclear warheads and chemical weapons had generated wild temperature swings. Titan, access engineering specs for our new thermal shock cannons. The display filled with schematics for the Hyperion's most experimental weapons. Designed for ice mining in the outer system, the cannons could switch between superheated plasma and liquid nitrogen streams in milliseconds. They'd been considered too unstable for military use, until now. The door hissed open, and Captain Sarah Martinez of the Council Shiplight of Dawn entered. The alien diplomat's silver scales caught the light as she moved. "Commander Reynolds, the Council requires your answer. Will Earth commit its fleets to our defense?" Reynolds stood, his 6'2" frame casting a long shadow. "No, Captain. We won't be sending our fleets." He gestured to the display. "We'll be sending something better." The alien's expression showed confusion, or at least what Reynolds interpreted as confusion, on her non-human features. "I don't understand. Your species faces extinction along with the rest of us. Surely you'll commit more than one ship." Reynolds pulled up the Hyperion specs. This vessel was built to survive everything from solar flares to deep space ice fields. Her hull can withstand temperature changes that would shatter most ships. "And these," he highlighted the thermal shock cannons, "are about to become the perfect weapon against your crystal friends." Martine studied the schematics, her ancient eyes widening. "You found their weakness." "Better." Reynolds' grim smile returned. "We found out why they think they don't have one. Every advanced species in the galaxy attacks with sustained energy weapons. Beautiful, elegant, and completely useless. But rapid temperature changes. That's something their crystal structure can't adapt to fast enough." He turned to face the alien diplomat fully. "The Hyperion doesn't need a fleet. She just needs to get close enough to prove that sometimes the most primitive solution is the right one." As if on cue, the ship's alert system pulsed. "Commander," Titan's voice filled the room. "Engineering reports, the thermal shock cannons are ready for combat testing." Reynolds nodded to Martinez. "Care to watch humanity show the galaxy how we survived before we had all those fancy energy weapons?" The alien's expression might have been a smile. I begin to understand why the Council was so worried about your species, Commander Reynolds. Oh, he said, heading for the bridge. They haven't seen anything yet. The UES Hyperion hung in Earth's orbit like a predatory shadow, her sleek hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The latest evolution of human stealth technology made the warship nearly invisible to both standard sensors and the naked eye. A ghost ship in the truest sense. Commander Reynolds stood on the bridge, watching the final launch preparations through the main viewport. Behind him, the combined representatives of Earth's nations and the Galactic Council argued about the insanity of his plan. A single ship against their entire fleet. Admiral Chen of the Pan-Pacific Alliance gestured angrily at the strategic display. This isn't bravery, Reynolds. It's suicide. The Quantum Tribe's ambassador, a shifting mass of blue energy, pulsed in agreement. Our fleets of thousands failed. What makes you think one vessel can succeed where armies have fallen? Reynolds turned from the viewport, his face set with quiet determination. Because sometimes the smallest blade, properly placed, can do more than the largest hammer. He activated the tactical display. The Hyperion was built for deep space research, specifically for investigating the most extreme environments in our solar system. The display showed the ship's unique design features. Our stealth systems were created to hide from solar flares and cosmic radiation, not enemy sensors. Our hull can withstand temperature swings from near absolute zero to the surface of the sun, and our thermal shock cannons. He smiled. They were mining tools before they were weapons. Captain Martinez of the Light of Dawn moved forward, her scale-covered skin catching the light. The commander's theory is sound. The Vextar have never encountered a ship like this because no other species would think to build one. They all focused on advancing their energy weapons. Humanity chose to master the extremes of space itself. The ship's computer chimed softly. Launch window optimal. All systems report ready. Reynolds looked at each face in the room. We're not going to fight them like a military force. We're going to hunt them like predators. One ship can hide better than a fleet. One ship can strike and vanish before they can adapt. One ship can turn their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. Admiral Chen stepped forward. And if you're wrong, then humanity dies along with everyone else. Reynolds' voice was steel. But at least we'll die having tried something different instead of repeating the same failed tactics. The room fell silent as the stakes settled over everyone present. Finally, the European Union's representative spoke up. How many crew members are you taking? Minimal complement. 60 of our best. Every person aboard volunteered, knowing this might be a one-way trip. Reynolds checked his mission clock. And we launch in 5 minutes. The council members began to file out, some offering gestures of respect, others simply shaking their heads at what they saw as humanity's final act of defiance. Admiral Chen was the last to leave. Jack, she said, using his first name for the first time in years. Make it count. The bridge crew took their stations as the last visitors departed. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper at navigation, her hands dancing over the controls as she plotted their course through quantum space. Dr. James Wong at sciences, his expertise in crystal structures would be critical. Chief Engineer Maria Santos at engineering, the woman who had modified the thermal shock cannons for combat. All stations report, Reynolds commanded, taking his chair. The responses came back crisp and professional. No fear, no hesitation, just determination and the quiet pride of a crew about to make history or die trying. Navigation ready. Engineering ready. Weapons ready. Sciences ready. Medical ready. Combat systems ready. Reynolds took one last look at Earth through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Vextar were destroying worlds, believing nothing could stop them. They had never faced a species that thrived on being underestimated. Launch. The Hyperion's engines flared to life, a brief flash of blue that quickly faded to nothing as the stealth systems engage. Like a shark sliding into dark waters, the human warship disappeared into the depths of space, hunting the hunters that had terrorized the galaxy. The hunt had begun. 3 days of silent running had brought the Hyperion to the outer edge of the Vexstar advance. The bridge crew worked in near darkness, their stations dimmed to maintain their night vision. Commander Reynolds studied the tactical display where 3 crystal ships patrolled the debris field of what had once been a thriving mining colony. "Contact range in 5 minutes," Lieutenant Cooper whispered, though sound couldn't travel in space. Something about the hunt made everyone speak in hushed tones. "They haven't detected us." Dr. Wong's voice came through the command channel. "Thermal imaging shows their crystal structure is currently stabilized at -100 degrees Celsius. Perfect for our first test." Chief Santos added from engineering. "Thermal shock cannons primed. Port and starboard arrays ready for alternating fire." Reynolds leaned forward in his chair, remembered the simulation data. "We hit them with maximum heat, then immediate cold. Don't give their structure time to adapt." He paused, then added, "And keep recording everything. The rest of the fleet will need this data." The Hyperion glided through space like a ghost, her hull absorbing every stray photon. The Vexstar patrol moved with the arrogance of apex predators, their crystal ships pulsing with internal light as they swept the region for survivors. 2 minutes to optimal range. Cooper updated. "Their formation is spreading out." Reynolds nodded. "Perfect. They're making this easy. Target the furthest ship first. The others won't have time to react." The bridge crew moved with practiced precision, every motion calculated and smooth. They'd drilled this attack pattern 100 times in simulation. Now it was time to see if human ingenuity could match alien power. 1 minute. Reynolds felt his pulse quicken, but kept his voice steady. "Weapon control. Plot a 5-second burst from the port arrays. Follow immediately with starboard cold stream. 30 seconds. The tactical display showed the target ship turning, its patrol pattern bringing it perfectly into the Hyperion's kill zone. Either they were very lucky, or the universe had a sense of irony. 10 seconds. Reynolds took a deep breath. Weapons free. The Hyperion's port arrays erupted with superheated plasma, the temperature spike massive enough to rival a star's corona. The crystal ship's hull flared brilliant white under the assault, its structure already beginning to adapt. But the adaptation was its downfall. Cold stream, now. The starboard arrays fired their liquid nitrogen payload, flash freezing the superheated crystal. The temperature differential was too extreme, too sudden. Stress patterns appeared across the alien ship's surface like spider webs. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the crystal ship shattered like glass in a freeze, breaking apart into millions of glittering shards. Its internal light flickered and died, the pieces already beginning to drift apart in the zero gravity. Target destroyed. Weapons control reported, unable to keep the excitement from their voice, reading multiple stress fractures in the debris. The other 2 patrol ships reacted instantly, their hulls flaring with energy as they charged their weapons. But the Hyperion was already moving, her stealth systems making her nearly impossible to track. "Second target acquired," Cooper called out. "They're trying to predict our position based on weapons fire." Reynolds allowed himself a grim smile. "Let's show them why that won't work." Engineering. Vent excess heat through all ports. Create multiple thermal signatures. The Hyperion released clouds of superheated gas in every direction, confusing the crystal ship's sensors. They fired their energy weapons at the decoys, their beams passing harmlessly through empty space. Port arrays recharge, weapons reported. Cold stream at 90%. "Target the lead ship," Reynolds ordered. "Same pattern, different angle. Let's make sure this wasn't a fluke." The bridge crew moved with even more confidence now, the success of their first kill proving their theory. The Hyperion slipped through the chaos of thermal clouds like a shark through bloody waters, lining up her second kill shot. The hunt had become a harvest, and humanity was about to send the galaxy a message written in broken crystal. The Hyperion's victory over the patrol had come with a price. The last crystal ship had managed to send a distress signal before shattering. Now long-range sensors showed the main Vex-Star fleet approaching, over 300 capital ships strong, their combined mass blotting out the stars behind them. "Well," Lieutenant Cooper said from her navigation station, "we got their attention." Commander Reynolds studied the massive asteroid field between them and the approaching fleet, the remnants of a destroyed planet. Its rocks still held incredible temperature variations, some surfaces baked by the local star, others forever hidden in shadow and frozen solid. "Dr. Wong," Reynolds called to his science officer, "what's the temperature differential in that field?" Wong's fingers flew over his console. Surfaces in direct sunlight reach 400 degrees Celsius. Shadowed areas drop to -150. The variations create constant microfractures in the asteroids. A slow smile spread across Reynolds' face. "Chief Santos, how are our thermal shock cannons looking?" "Fully charged, Commander. But we don't have enough power to take on their entire fleet." "We won't need to." Reynolds activated the ship-wide command channel. "All hands, this is the commander. We're about to try something that would make any sane captain resign their commission. I need everyone at their best." He turned to Cooper. "Plot us a course through the densest part of that field. I want a path that takes us past every major temperature variation you can find." Understanding dawned on the navigator's face. "You want to use the natural heat and cold." "Better." Reynolds' eyes gleamed. "I want to use their own arrogance against them. They think they're invincible. Let's see how they handle a game of follow the leader." The Hyperion powered up, her engines leaving a deliberate heat trail as she approached the asteroid field. The Vex-Star fleet accelerated in response, their crystal ships moving in perfect formation. "They're taking the bait," Wong reported. "All ships pursuing at maximum speed." Reynolds nodded. "Now comes the hard part. Lieutenant Cooper, take us in. Chief Santos, prepare for my mark. I want every scrap of power we have going to the maneuvering thrusters." The Hyperion plunged into the asteroid field like a diver into dark waters. Cooper's hands danced across her controls, threading the ship through gaps that seemed impossibly small. Behind them, the Crystal Fleet followed, their larger ships having to break formation to navigate the field. "First major temperature boundary in 10 seconds, Wong called out. "Reading -100 on the dark side, 350 in the sunlight." Reynolds gripped his chair. "All hands brace for high-G maneuvers. Cooper, on my mark, I want a full retrograde burn followed by a lateral thrust port side." The boundary approached. The lead Vex-Star ships were almost on them. "Mark." The Hyperion's thrusters fired, the ship spinning on its axis while maintaining its forward momentum. For a split second, they faced the oncoming crystal ships. Reynolds keyed weapons control. "Fire port arrays. Full spread." Superheated plasma erupted from the Hyperion's guns, not aimed at the ships, but at the frozen asteroids around them. The sudden heat caused the ice-laden rocks to explode, creating a chain reaction of debris. The lead Vex-Star ships flew straight into the storm of temperature-stressed fragments. "Hard port," Reynolds commanded. "Take us behind that sunlit asteroid." The Hyperion shot sideways, just as the first crystal ships hit the debris cloud. Their hulls, already stressed from the rapid temperature changes in the field, began to show the now familiar fracture patterns. 3 ships shattered almost immediately. A 4th tried to turn and collided with a 5th, both breaking apart in a spectacular display. "It's working," Wong shouted. "Their fleet formation is breaking down. They're colliding with the asteroids, and each other. Reynolds watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Vextar fleet had split into smaller groups, each trying to navigate the increasingly chaotic field. Every sharp turn exposed them to another temperature extreme. Every evasive maneuver led them into another trap. "Bring us around for another pass," he ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you chase a human ship into hell." The asteroid field had become a graveyard of crystal shards, the debris of dozens of shattered Vextar ships glinting in the starlight. The Hyperion drifted in the shadow of a massive rock, her hull cooling after the intense battle. On the bridge, Commander Reynolds watched as Dr. Wong analyzed the data from their latest scans. "Something's not right," Wong muttered, his eyes fixed on his display. "These energy readings from the destroyed ships, they don't match any known weapon signatures." Reynolds moved to the science station. "Explain." "The crystal ships are giving off complex bioelectrical patterns." Wong brought up a detailed scan. "Look at these structures inside the larger fragments. They're not weapon banks or power cores. They're growth chambers." Lieutenant Cooper left her navigation station to join them. "Growth chambers? You mean like nurseries?" Wong's voice was quiet. "The entire fleet is one giant nursery. The crystal ships aren't just vessels. They're incubators for the next generation of Vextar." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Reynolds stared at the scattered debris field, seeing it with new eyes. They hadn't just destroyed enemy ships. They'd killed children. "There's more," Wong continued. "The planets they've been attacking. I've cross-referenced the elements they've been harvesting. It's all material needed for crystal growth and neural development. They're not conquering the galaxy. They're desperately searching for resources to save their species." Chief Santo's voice came through the command channel. "Commander, you need to see this. We've managed to reconstruct some of their communication frequencies from the battle data." Reynolds nodded to his officers and headed to engineering. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet, the crew still at battle stations. In engineering, Santos had set up a makeshift analysis station surrounded by holographic displays. "Watch this," she said, playing a recording of crystal frequencies. "These aren't weapon coordinations or battle plans. They're, well, listen for yourself." The translated frequencies filled the room. They weren't war cries or attack commands. They were lullabies, songs of protection and growth, of parents sheltering their young. The Vextar ships had been singing to their children even as they fought. "How many?" Reynolds asked, his voice hoarse. "How many children were in those ships we destroyed?" Santos shook her head. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. And the main fleet, she didn't need to finish." Reynolds braced himself against a console, the weight of command feeling heavier than ever. They had found a way to defeat the Vextar, but at what cost? These weren't mindless destroyers. They were parents fighting for their children's future. "Commander," Wong's voice came through the channel. "The remaining fleet is regrouping. They'll be within strike range in 20 minutes. We need a decision." Reynolds closed his eyes, remembering Earth's history. How many times had his own species fought and killed over resources? How many civilizations had been destroyed by simple misunderstanding and fear? "Chief Santos," he said finally, "can you modify our communication arrays to broadcast on their crystal frequencies?" "Yes, but..." "Do it. And get me everything we have on uninhabited systems with high concentrations of the elements they need." He straightened, decision made. "Dr. Wong, start compiling star charts and mineral surveys." Lieutenant Cooper's voice showed understanding. "You're going to help them. We're going to try something that's never been tried before." Reynolds headed back to the bridge. "We're going to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to destroy. It's our ability to find a better way." Behind him, the crystal frequencies continued their haunting songs, the sound of parents trying to protect their children, in the only way they knew how. In 20 minutes, Reynolds would either start a new war or end one, and his choice would define humanity's place among the stars. The Hyperion hung in space before the assembled Vextar fleet, her weapons powered down. Commander Reynolds stood on the bridge, watching the crystal ships arrange themselves in attack formation. The data package they'd prepared was ready for transmission. Star charts, mineral surveys, and safe routes to uninhabited systems rich in the elements they needed. Broadcasting in their frequency range, Chief Santos reported from engineering. They're receiving, but no response yet. Lieutenant Cooper's hands hovered over her controls. Sir, if this doesn't work, we won't have time to power up our weapons. If this doesn't work, Reynolds said quietly, we wouldn't survive long enough to use them anyway. The bridge crew watched as the first images reached the crystal ships, detailed maps of resource-rich systems far from populated space, places where the Vextar could harvest what they needed without destroying other civilizations. Dr. Wong monitored the response. Their energy patterns are changing. The combat harmonics are shifting to something else. The lead crystal ship moved forward, its surface pulsing with internal light. A new frequency washed over the Hyperion sensors, not a war cry or a threat, but a question. They want to know why, Wong translated. Why we're offering help after we proved we could destroy them. Reynolds stepped forward. Send the next package. The transmission continued. Images of Earth's history, of wars fought over resources, of species driven to extinction, of civilizations collapsed through conflict, but also images of conservation, of rehabilitation, of species brought back from the brink through cooperation and understanding. Their response is coming through, Wong said. They're showing us their world, or what's left of it. The holographic display filled with images of a dying star system, a crystal world cracking apart as its sun expanded, forcing its people to flee in ships made from their own bodies. Generation after generation born in space, searching for the elements they needed to survive. Send the final package, Reynolds ordered. The last transmission was simple, a map of safe passage to the resources they needed, offered freely, a promise of protection from other species while they harvested what their children required, and a request for knowledge exchange. Their crystal technology for human innovation. Minutes passed in tense silence. The crystal ships moved in complex patterns, their lights pulsing as they communicated among themselves. Commander, Cooper called out. They're moving. The Vextar fleet began to shift, their formation changing from combat to something else. The ships arranged themselves in a pattern that looked almost like. It's a crystal garden, Wong breathed. It's their symbol for life and growth. The lead ship transmitted again. This time, the message was clear even before translation. Agreement. Acceptance. Hope. Reynolds let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Send word to Earth and the Council. Tell them to prepare for peace talks. The news spread quickly through the galaxy. The terrible crystal fleet that had terrorized civilizations was now being escorted to uninhabited systems by a single human ship. Species that had hidden in fear now watched in amazement as the Vextar harvested what they needed without destruction. Their ships growing new crystals in peaceful orbit around dead worlds. 1 month later, the Galactic Council convened again. Representatives of 18 species now sat at the table. The newest members were both human and Vextar. You could have destroyed them, the High Counselor said to Reynolds during the ceremony. Your weapons proved superior. Why choose a harder path? Reynolds watched as a crystal ship demonstrated its growth technology to a team of human scientists, while human engineers helped the Vextar design new, safer ways to harvest resources. Because the true measure of a species isn't their ability to destroy, he answered. It's their capacity to see beyond the easy solution to find a better way. That's what makes us human. Above them, The stars shone on a galaxy forever changed, not by the power of weapons, but by the strength of understanding. The crystal ships still sailed between the stars, but now their songs were of peace and growth, not war and desperation. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as teachers of a lesson as old as their species. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy, but turning them into a friend.